The confidence that you get when you pull the ripcord and travel the world and leave the job and sell your stuff and the house and all that, you will not know yourself anymore. Like, you think you're confident now, you've seen nothing yet.
Welcome to the Go Hunt Life Show, hosted by Todd Nevins.
This is Todd Nevins, and I explore stories about people that had seemingly normal lives and careers going, but they pulled the ripcord and blew up their comfort bubbles to hunt down their life that they had always dreamed of living. On the show today, I talked to Anna and Derek Morris. A few years ago, they had everything that they ever wanted in Houston, Texas. Derek had a corporate job in the oil and gas industry, and Anna was self-employed building a startup. They had a perfect house with a pool, a big yard, and a mortgage, so on paper, they had the perfect normal life. But their ripcord decision began to build, and it peaked when they realized their fear of doing nothing was greater than their fear of potentially screwing up their lives by quitting everything safe to travel the world. Their big house in Houston is now a distant memory after traveling through 30 countries, and I catch up to them from a small little beach town in Mexico, where they're regrouping on their next adventure, which involves building a startup to solve their own travel problems that they encountered along the way. Thanks to Nifty Ghazni for introducing me to Derek and Anna. If you know of a crazy story of letting everything go that's safe to pursue a path less traveled, I want to know about it. You can reach me at GoHuntLife.com. Now, my conversation with Anna and Derek Morris of We Play Everywhere is coming up next. This episode is sponsored by PrintDirtCheap.com. Jeff Chrisman, the founder of Print Dirt Cheap, started his business the way most companies begin, with grit, determination, and a vision. And now, a decade later, he's built his company into an online printing powerhouse. If I've handed you a business card in the last 4 years, it was printed by Print Dirt Cheap. And the decals all over my laptop, they printed those too. They print and ship over 30 categories of printing products, from business cards and decals to banners, company letterhead, restaurant menus, and a ton of direct mail pieces. And they have just rolled out an entirely new website, ensuring that your online user experience to place an order is simple and fast. And when you place that order, use promo code LifeHunter for $10 off. And Jeff has just launched Success Hackers, which is a global group of tenacious entrepreneurs that share the latest tips, tools, and hacks into growing a business. Check it out at facebook.com/Success Hackers. Anna and Derek, thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for
having us.
Where are you located in the world? And if you were to walk outside, describe what you would see.
So we're in Todos Santos in the Baja Peninsula of Mexico. And we have just left the beach, actually. My view is a little bit different. We were just on the beach, but we can still see the beach. We're about an 5-minute walk to the beach. So we see palm trees. Occasionally we see whales. And lots of waves. Yeah.
Wonderful. How old are you? Are you married? And do you have kids?
So, yes, I'm 40. Anna's 38. No, 37.
I'm 38.
About to be 38. Oh,
no,
that's we don't actually know how old we are.
I turned 38 already.
I'm 40, 41 in a couple weeks, and then Anna's 38. And we are married and no kids as of yet.
What are your professions and primary ways that you make money?
I was in the oil and gas business. I was a finance director.
And I was in sales for pharmaceutical companies. And then I've been an entrepreneur for the last 5 years.
Do you have income now, or are you living off of savings?
Living off of savings.
All right. Let's go back then. Take me back to 2000 and Derek, I think it would be 2015 when you were in the oil and gas world. Like, put me in your lives back then. What did you own and what were you doing for a living?
It's so different.
That's exactly what I want to get to.
Oh. Don't take me back there. We were living in Houston, Texas. I was in the oil and gas business, and Anna had left New York and her pharmaceutical career, and then short run through Austin, and then we got together. She moved to Houston, so she was working on her own business from home, and I was at the office.
Way too much.
I don't know. Not as much as I had been in my early, 20s or so, but still more than I wanted to be. And even when I wasn't at the office, it was, stressful evenings, or the worst day was always Sunday. Sunday was the day where it was like all the things that I hadn't finished the night before or the week before. I needed to finish first thing Monday morning. So Sunday night was like the worst night of our week, I think.
Yeah.
From an anxiety perspective, lack of sleep, staying up late, what?
No, just anxiety.
The anxiety.
The feeling where there's just more work than you can get done, or for whatever reason, you're not getting everything on your to-do list done. And that was kind of running the show.
And I think there's another component to it as well, is that we got married later in life. So, I know that, we both kind of grew up in Texas, and a lot of people get married in their 20s, and that wasn't what we did. We got married in our, mid 30s, and we really like each other. So when he would have to go to work on Monday, I think that, you were obviously stressed about work, but I was also really frustrated that here I am, like, living in Houston, Texas, where I don't really want to be, for the guy that, just way exceeded my dreams. And then he's going to go to work. And that was such a bummer every Sunday night for me. I was like, wait a minute.
Where's my playmate?
Yeah, like, where's my friend to play with?
But that's normal, though. That's a normal
situation. Yeah, but see, I was
situation.
An entrepreneur. So I had been an entrepreneur for at least, at that point, longer than that. I started entrepreneurship in 2008. So, and I'd always had an outside sales job, so I'd never had to go to an office. So for me, it was very bizarre.
But it was, it's interesting that you say that it's normal, because it is. And I think I always had,
I hated
it. I had a hard time getting my head around how Anna felt about me going to my job when it was normal. It paid our bills. It gave us a lifestyle that we wanted.
But his team was global, and so that also made no sense to me.
Sure, but my point is that most people would say,
yes, most people.
Yeah, of course that's normal. You go to your job, but Anna's right. I mean, I had a global team, and
you were working all the time.
But I was always at the office, even though, I did have a lot of meetings, but sometimes I had no meetings, and it didn't quite add up that I needed to go to this office every day when most of my team was in Europe, and I was losing valuable time driving to and from the office when they were halfway through their workday.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I want to jump in, because your question also, Todd, was what did we have? What did our life look like? We lived in a really perfect house from 1947, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. We had completely redecorated it. It had a big backyard, a doggy door, a pool, 2-car garage. Around the corner was an elementary school and a yoga studio across the street that I was teaching at in, my free time. And it was a perfect setup. People would say we had the perfect life.
What changed?
Well, I didn't think it was so perfect. And Derek would go to work, and I would be in this perfect house, and I'm like, I don't really care about this house. Like, I don't really care about all this stuff. I remember when we first got married, getting all the dishes. You get a lot of dishes when you get married. And I remember unpacking the dishes, and I think Derek was even there. And there was a moment when I started to freak out, because I knew that I didn't care about all the stuff, but I had gone so far down the road with it that I didn't say anything. And he was thinking the same thing. We found this out years later. He was thinking the same thing, like, what are we going to do with all these stupid dishes?
12.
Yeah, like we had a million. We just had way too many things for the kitchen. I don't know.
So there's a couple things, actually, to answer the question my way. Anna obviously was working from home and we have a lot of friends in Houston, but on the day-to-day of her being at home all day working and I'm at the office all day, it's not how we wanted to design our life. And I guess we have enough confidence, or what you may call it, that we felt like we could design a life that we wanted.
We had an amazing community of people that supported us and cheered us on. And I think that's the piece of the puzzle that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah, so that was a big part of it.
You guys are in Todos Santos, Mexico, so certainly a lot has changed from Houston house, dog door, pool to you are 5 minutes from the beach. So Derek, we talked before we started recording, like your identity, you've been 15 years in oil and gas, all that entails. And, my thought when you're saying you have a global team, and knowing now that you guys are in Mexico and that you've traveled the world, was the first step, how do I become location independent and keep my job?
Well, I didn't see a pathway. There are certainly a lot of companies out there where you can be location independent and it works well. in the company I was in, and I would dare to say a lot of the oil and gas companies, I just don't think they've evolved to that level. So it wasn't how can I keep my job and be location independent. It was how can I be location independent. And at the same time, we did a lot of work. Both of us have done a lot of work on ourselves and looking at what we want in life. And I started to see that I had a lot of my identity tied up in my career, and it wasn't serving me. It was holding me back from other opportunities and a different way of life that I knew that I really wanted.
Well, to jump in on that question too, I think that a big moment, Derek's company was acquired by another company. So a lot of things started changing. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners have lived through that if they're not going through it right now. And I certainly went through it a lot in the pharmaceutical field. But once that happened and the pathways started changing, I remember a moment when Derek came home and we had a really frank conversation. He said, I don't want my boss's job, and I don't want my boss's job. And I don't know, and I don't see another division that I want to be in either. So I think you clearly didn't see a pathway that you wanted to continue within the company.
Yeah,
Is that accurate?
I got to the point where I didn't know what my next move was. I didn't see, I remember when it happened, I was sitting in this big boardroom and lots of VPs and folks around the table, and my boss was running the meeting, and I remember thinking, I don't ever want to do this. And his boss was there, and I thought, I don't ever want to do that job. And it was a real sort of watershed moment, because when that happened, and I realized that I didn't want his job or his boss's job, then it started to feel like, well, what am I doing here?
It doesn't sound like you wanted to even be in the industry either, because the same boss and the same boss's boss is in every board meeting in that industry.
Yeah. For sure. And I think what happened, and I didn't realize this until after I had left the job, but I knew that I made the right decision, and everyone, including my boss, was very supportive, extremely supportive, more than I could have ever imagined. But it wasn't until probably 6 months through our trip that I realized that what had happened, of course, my company got bought, but that was a big thing, but the culture started to shift. And then I realized that what had kept me at that job for 14 years was the company culture and the people. And so when that started to shift, and then I realized I didn't want my boss's job or his boss's job, and the culture had shifted, then it was time to go.
From that board meeting to the day that you quit, how long of a period of time was that?
It's a bit of a tricky one, because that was probably, I think, in the fall of 2015. Mm-hmm. And then actually what had happened is it was like February 2016, so just call it 5 months later. And my good friend was in my office. He had hired me at the company 14 years prior. And he was in town from Brazil, and he was sitting in my office, and we were just talking as friends do. And he said, well, we started talking about this other position that was open. And I said, I don't want that job. I've never wanted that job. And I said, actually, I don't think I want this job. I don't know that I want another job. I want to just get out of here and go do my own thing. And then a week later, my boss got promoted, and this guy became my new boss.
It was amazing.
It was absolutely perfect, because the first thing he did is he walked into my office a week later when he got promoted, and he sat down and he said, so how long do I have you for?
Did you feel like he gave you permission with that question?
It was amazing.
Absolutely. Because look, the thing is that this guy,
he's like Derek's guardian angel. This guy is
he's
amazing.
Much more than a boss to me. And, we had a really frank conversation, and he knew that there were other things I wanted in life, and he understood that and appreciated that. And so he came in and said, how long do I have you for? And I remember, it was one of those moments where I thought I can backpedal or I can just throw my hat over the fence. And I told him May. So this is in February, and I said May.
4 months.
Yeah. And then I called Anna, and she was at the grocery store buying all organic. And I said, I just quit my job.
You looked at that like you were putting in your resignation right then.
Yeah.
And I had. I knew that.
And it was the end of February. It was actually 2 months. He told him May 1st. And so that left us March and April. Yeah. And I remember I was standing in the grocery store when he said, I just told him May 1st. And I was like, yeah, okay. great, good for you, honey. And I'm saying all of this. And he's like, you're not freaking out? I'm like, absolutely not. We've got this, no problem. I hang up the phone. I immediately call my friend Carrie. And I'm like, oh my God, you're not going to believe this. Derek quit his job. I am freaking out, but he cannot know that I'm freaking out. So I'm just going to call you instead.
And then you switched everything to generic.
And then I returned all the groceries. And
Oh, no, you did not.
no, I didn't. I'm joking.
All right. So from that phone call, it's the end of February to May. What was your plan? Okay, I've got a couple of questions here. Number one, what was your plan May 1st? And I'm assuming that included you selling everything that you owned there in Houston, including the placemats, the place settings for 12 people.
Yeah. All the damn dishes. No.
Yeah, so I actually can't remember if it was just before that conversation with my new boss or if it was after, but we had been on a ski trip and I said to Anna.
It was around the same time.
Because we had been talking about me leaving my job, and I said, I need to know the answer to these questions before I can. Questions. And they turned out there were 14 questions. And it was 14? Things like,
yeah,
apparently.
Had a lot of questions.
I'm a finance guy that had lots of questions. And not surprisingly, they were all around finance. So it was like, what can we sell the house for? It's a 2-bedroom. Should we add a 3rd bedroom? Do we need to renovate it, paint it, or should we just sell it as is? All these kind of questions that I needed a realtor to answer. So the plan was in May was to have sold the house and
start a trip around the world.
And to start a trip around the world.
With savings. You had savings with money from your house. You're going to sell your house. You had equity, all of those things.
We had money set aside. We had investments.
We had been saving at this point for 9 months. We'd hired I don't know if you know Dave Ramsey. He's like a personal finance coach that has you not use any credit cards and you go to a cash system. And we'd been doing that since June of 2015.
Yeah, so we've been
really good about budgeting. Yeah,
mainly that was just because we, frankly, had a bit of a spending problem and we needed to rein ourselves in.
Yeah.
But in that process, we started paying ourselves first. We started putting money aside. Yeah. Not necessarily at the beginning. It wasn't necessarily to leave our jobs. It was just to be more frugal. So we had that. We had investments. And I knew we'd make a lot of money on the house. Yeah. I mean, I'm paying taxes on it. I know what it's worth. So so I needed the answers to these questions. Anna called a realtor. She was there the next day, and it's like the realtor that everybody uses in this neighborhood. And she answered the questions.
We came back on a Monday night, and I had all 14 questions answered on Thursday. I was like, now can we go?
She might have been a little eager.
I was a little eager.
And so your answer was, yeah, we can go.
So we can go.
Yeah.
And then
we had the windfall moment.
And then another little caveat is that there was a project that I was overseeing in England, and the girl that was running it was going out on maternity leave, and I didn't have anyone that I could just plug in to run that project. And so my boss and I talked about it and decided that that Anna and I would go to England and run the project through the end of the year, and then I would leave.
Now the timeline's making sense. So you cushioned. Okay, interesting.
So you cushioned because we sold the house. We didn't have anywhere to live.
But I just to paint the picture a little bit more, I am in the parking lot coming home from somewhere. It's noon on a Friday. We have just put our dream house on the market. And I mean, this house, all of our friends tried to buy it. Like, it's just one of those perfect houses that everybody wanted.
It was a great house.
And our realtor has put the house on the market. I've just gone through 10 days of renovating the house in a really quick turnaround. And Derek calls me from work and he says, I think they're going to ask us to move to England. What do you want me to say?
Yeah, I need to know what to say.
Are you in or are you out? And I said, well, can we take the dog? And he said, yeah, of course. And I said, well, then I'm in. So
next thing you know, she was packing boxes.
But that's, I don't know that would have happened, quite honestly.
That sounds like a setback maybe to your original dream plan of traveling the world. Did you look at it like that, or another opportunity?
No, opportunity.
No, I mean, we looked at it as.
I did.
I mean, we no longer had a mortgage. We didn't have the bills that we used to have. We both looked at it as an opportunity to
travel Europe.
I mean, I would still work. There wasn't anything wrong with my job other than the fact that I needed to be in Houston, and I, had kind of completed on that time. So we looked at it as an opportunity to go over, run the project, and we knew we could travel Europe very easily from England. So so it worked.
We moved there, I think April something, right? I don't know.
In April.
Yeah,
April
we moved there
14th.
in April of 2016. And it gave us until the end of the year. So we lived in England for 6 months, and then he finished up the project in Romania, which was a fascinating place to live. And what was great is that it gave us all of that time to continue saving. So what it did is that we had originally thought we'd do a trip around the world on warp speed in like 4 or 5 months. And instead, now financially, we were able to go for 10 months.
Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Click Placement, a digital agency designing Google AdWords and pay-per-click marketing strategies for startups, small businesses, and even people building a side hustle. Hit up clickplacement.com to start a conversation. If you would like to personally support the Go Hunt Life podcast, go to patreon.com/Go Hunt Life to make a donation.
So in January 2017, you finished the project and now officially resign?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in at the end of December, it was like, I think we
December
flew back
23rd.
on the 20th, and I think I was in the office on the 21st or something like that, and signing paperwork and all that. So, and then we did, Christmas with the family, and then January was kind of like getting ready for the trip. I mean, we needed to make sure we had the clothes that we needed because
We had to get new passports.
we were going in
We had to get new passports because we had our passports stolen in Greece.
Yeah, that's
so we
right.
didn't even have passports at the time.
Then we basically had to get ready for this trip.
Yeah.
I mean, a 10-month trip around the world with carry-on suitcases, and we had to do it in warp speed. And we did. I mean, it was quite insane
crazy.
what we did.
You went to, in 10 months, how many countries did you hit?
30.
30's warp speed in 10 months. Why not, if you've got a little bit of a cushion, you pull the ripcord, it seems like maybe it was delayed certainly by 9 or 10 months or so. So you pull the ripcord, you get on the plane. What's the first country you fly to?
South Africa.
Yeah, so we flew to South Africa first. We started there. We were originally going to do the trip in
reverse.
We were going to basically start in New Zealand and do Australia, Bali, and then like come up through Asia. But we traveled in carry-on suitcases, so we only had summer clothes. That's why we needed to sort of start in a warm climate for February.
We chased summer.
Then we needed to come up to Europe when the seasons flipped, and then we needed to go back down. So we originally going to start in New Zealand, and we decided. I think it was a week or two before we started our trip.
10 days before our trip, we turned it upside down.
We flipped it all in reverse and started in South Africa.
Yeah. So needless to say, we did not plan it in advance. We planned like by the seat of our pants as we were traveling with mostly terrible Wi-Fi.
And needless to say, we're flexible and maybe a little crazy.
Yeah, it sounds flexible, but 30 countries, 10 months sounds pretty stressful. Would you have, now you're looking back at it, would you have slowed that down and maybe hit 15 or 20 countries or stayed longer in certain places?
Well, we actually did. So in 5 of those countries, we spent between 3 and 4 weeks. So it was actually 25 countries in 5 months is a more accurate, probably, description.
So yeah, part of the trip was very fast and part of it was...
Yeah, but then we would get pretty tired. And so then we would, we went to Provence after we were super exhausted from a bunch of traveling. So then I just got an Airbnb for 8 days in a city with nothing to do except for sit at cafes and people watch.
Derek, were you ever contacted to go back to work with another job offer during this period of time?
I would say no to that. I don't know that I was contacted because if I wasn't checking that email.
On purpose, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Was there ever a point through your travels that you thought, that you looked back, that you thought, man, we could really still be socking money away versus spending money now?
No, absolutely not.
Not ever.
Never, not one. In fact,
Not
the financial advisor that we had, I remember sitting in his office and we told him I was going to leave my job and we were going to travel the world. And he looked at us like we had 3 heads.
I mean, he thought he misheard us. He was like, surely you did not just say
and
that.
He looked at Anna and he looked at me, looked back at Anna and he said, I just don't see it. He goes, I would give him 3 months and he's going to be wanting to go back to work. And we both looked at each other, laughed, and said, you don't know us very well.
You don't know Derek at all.
Were there other people, sounds like your boss, you said your guardian angel. Was there anyone else when you were leading up to quitting saying, man, you're going to really regret this. You're in the prime of your earning potential in your life. What are you doing?
Actually, it was quite interesting. It's a great question, Todd. Actually. I didn't get any of that.
That's surprising.
People were so jealous, actually. People were
supportive, let's say that.
Well, jealous isn't a nice word, sorry.
We didn't tell a lot of people, because keep in mind, I was still working all of 2016, and I had a team that I couldn't tell them early on that, oh, by the way, I'm leaving at the end of the year.
Which meant that I couldn't either. So there wasn't.
But I'll tell you that when I did leave, and I sent out the email that everyone sends when they leave a company after 14 or 15 years, and I got the most amazing responses from CEOs. I got one from the CEO that said, man, I've always wanted to do something like this. And, he was a West Point grad and then a Harvard MBA, and he kept his studies going, and he went and he kept working, and he said he'd always regretted not doing a trip like this, and he was really proud of me for doing this.
Yeah.
Were they expecting this to just be, you just called it a trip, which means it has a beginning and an end, 10 months, and then the implication is that you get back into your old life in some way. Was that what you were planning on doing, or is that how you portrayed it to the people, to the CEO and the people you were leaving?
I don't think there was any expectation that I was coming back. I mean, there's certainly no expectation I was coming back to the company or coming back to the industry.
But I think there was a lot of confusion, because it was a trip with a beginning, middle, and end, that a lot of people thought we were coming back to Houston. And so we did get a lot of people saying, like, oh, we'll have to have you over for dinner. Can you come over on Saturday night? And we're like, guys, we haven't lived in Houston in 2 years, and we don't plan to. So
there was some confusion.
I think that there was a lot of confusion.
Maybe more on the social level.
Yeah, more on the social level, though.
What was your plan after the 10-month period of time was up? Where were you coming back to, and what were you going to do then?
Oh, we were going to have a major epiphany along our travels.
We thought we would have an epiphany that we never did.
What were you looking for?
Well, I mean, I've never not worked for someone.
He needed some white space.
And Anna's only worked for herself and been an entrepreneur, and I needed blank space in order to figure out what would be my next move. Mm-hmm. What do I want to do in my next 20 years?
All right. So we jumped over this. You're both from Temple, Texas, relatively small town. And when you came back off of the road, where did you go and where did you stay?
We stayed with my mom in Temple, Texas for 4 nights.
Well, yeah, we had the benefit of coming back right at Christmas time.
Yeah, so we would normally be home for the holidays anyway. And then we stayed at Derek's parents' house, like a 10-minute drive away, for 4 days. And then we grabbed our dog and we drove out to West Texas, and we spent, some time in Marfa, because we'd always wanted to explore Marfa. And then we had budgeted financially to have all of 2018 to figure out our business and what we were going to do.
Yeah, to figure out what's next.
Yeah. And we didn't know where we were going to live, but around, I guess, September of our trip, we were in Japan. And we started looking seriously at where do we want to go. And we'd found this place, Todos Santos, back in 2015 on a family vacation. And we had just fallen in love with it. And I had one of those little voices in my head that said, you're going to live there. And so we thought, well, maybe now we go live there. And it's a very affordable place to live. It was, we really want to become fluent in Spanish. All we need is great Wi-Fi. And so we came down here for 3 months to check it out.
And the next phase, from a work professional perspective, have you figured that out yet?
I would say we're figuring it out. I mean, I have some passions, or maybe some itches I'd like to scratch. I don't think I'll be doing it in the next month or two, but we have a business we want to create, and we can do it. We can create it from anywhere, because a lot of it's sweat equity. And so we'll be doing that over the next few months.
Yeah, well, and I think that there are some tools that we created and used on our trip that we can easily systemize, and we think will help people. And that's what we're down here to do, to find out, if it'll help people and what we can make of it. So it's nice to have the space to figure it out because, I know a lot of people that do trips like this and they immediately go back to a job or their old life, and that can be a bit jarring. So it's been such a privilege to be able to do it like this.
What else are you working on in the next 6 months?
So we're a little bit fluid, I guess, at the moment, I would say, in that we have a couple business ideas that we want to put some effort into, but we don't know. I mean, we don't know in 3-4 months if we'll stay in Mexico a little longer, or we've wanted to go do a road trip.
We have another trip up our sleeves.
Yeah, we wanted to do a road trip through the national parks in the U.S., and I don't know if it's now or then. I don't know if it's now.
I think we do it this summer.
Yeah, so we're still a little bit fluid on that. Like Anna said, we gave ourselves permission and set ourselves up financially to not have to rush anything.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I wanted to do was leave, quite frankly, a very good and career that I had, and go do this trip and then have to go back and do the same thing again. So we've set ourselves up to allow us to think outside the box and have things develop a bit organically.
What advice do you have for that person that is sitting in the meeting right now, watching their boss give a presentation, and they're sitting there thinking, I don't want that person's job, and I don't want that person's boss's job either, but what do I do? How do I get out of this situation and this identity that I no longer want?
All there ever is to do is to know where you want to go and just take the next step. And then there'll be another step. And then you take that step and then the next step and then the step after that. It's not as hard as people think that it is. But when you think you have to be all the way up at the top of a ladder and you never see the steps that people get to get there, then it can look overwhelming. And what I would say to that person is, if you're sure that you don't want that, but maybe you don't know what you do want, just take the next step. Start saving your money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Absolutely.
When I left my job in New York, I cut my rent in half. I got a roommate. I, started saving my money. I got rid of all my credit card debt. Like, you can start doing those things and you'll be shocked at how the answers will show up for you.
That is perfectly said, and we are going to end at that. You can follow Anna and Derek at WePlayEverywhere.com, and Anna on Instagram at AnnaKMorris_ and Derek at Derek B. Morris. Derek and Anna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks for having us.
Don't forget to hit up the online printing rock stars at printdirtcheap.com and use promo code LifeHunter for $10 off. Hey, Life Hunters, thank you for listening to this episode of Go Hunt Life. If you like the show and would like to support it, go to iTunes and do this. Subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and review it. It helps, and thank you. If you or someone that you know has quit their normal life to follow their dreams, I would love an introduction and maybe interview them on the show. You can find me at GoHuntLife.com and also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at Go Hunt Life. Until next time, stay weird, dare greatly, and ripcord out.